Hi everyone, welcome to Theology 200, the liturgical year and liturgy of the hours. My name is Dr. Julia Upton. I'm a Sister of Mercy and a member of the theology faculty, and I'll be the professor in this online course. I'm looking forward to spending the semester with you, and I've prepared a course outline which we'll go through during this introductory session. But first of all, I think it would be helpful if I told you a little bit about me. I've been a professor at St. John's since 1978. I know your parents probably weren't even born in 1978, but I've been there that long. That is not when I started my teaching career. I actually taught for 12 years before that. I was an English teacher and got interested in questions about the church. I was in college during Vatican Council II, and it piqued my interest. So after I finished my master's degree in English at St. John's, I decided to take a theology course. And the course I took was the church, the liturgy, present tensions, and future trends, something like that, was Theology 150. It's still called Theology 150. And it changed my life, absolutely. And it became my life. So I did the master's degree at St. John's, and then I wanted to prepare myself to teach at the university level, and I went to Fordham. All the time I was still teaching English at a local Catholic high school. And then just before I was finishing my studies, I was hired as an adjunct part-time professor at St. John's. And then I came on full-time in January of 80. I finished my dissertation in 80, graduated in December of 80. I finished my dissertation then. So, and I've been at St. John's ever since, teaching and enjoying it, undergraduates and graduates. I spent 20 of those years as an administrator, but I still taught one course a semester, sometimes undergraduate, usually undergraduate, but sometimes graduate as well, if they needed me. I've also been active at the parish level, running lecture workshops, all kinds of things at the local parish, singing in choirs, wherever I lived at the time. I've been on the Brooklyn Diocesan Liturgical Commission as long as I've been at St. John's. I'm the longest serving person there. And I have been privileged to be on the United States Bishops Liturgy Commission. It used to be called the Bishops Committee on the Liturgy. And I served a term there, 3-year term there. And then later it became the Committee on Divine Worship. And I served on that committee later on. And it was the years they were doing the change of the translation, the 3rd edition of the Roman Missal. That was my last go-round on the Committee for Divine Worship. You can learn more than you ever wanted to know about me by looking at my webpage on Digication. So if you just go to the Digication site, I can give you the URL. You can find my CV there and all kinds of things. I've always been an active researcher, even when I was an administrator. I've written many, many articles, and 5 or 6 books, depending what you're counting. My first book was right after I finished my dissertation, and I wrote about the rite of Christian initiation of adults for catechumens, for people who were in the process. I'd done my dissertation, my master's thesis and my dissertation were both about different elements of the rite of Christian initiation of adults. But when I was doing all that research, I saw no one was writing anything for catechumens at that point. And so that's when I wrote Journey into Mystery, which Paulist was published. And then probably 5 or 6 years later, the RCIA became nationally mandated, and at that time they redid the translation a little bit, and it appeared that most of the people coming into the church at that point were not literally catechumens. They were not the unbaptized, but they were rather people coming into full communion. So I rewrote the text with those other ideas in mind. And so in essence, it's really the same book, but it has two different titles and two different publishers in 2 different years. So that's why I say 5 or 6 books. And then I wrote a book called A Church for the Next Generation that kind of grew out of my dissertation. I sort of projected what other sacraments might look like if they applied the kind of process that the rite of Christian initiation of adults allows for or encourages. So I took each of the sacraments. And then I wrote a book about the rite of reconciliation. It's called A Time for Embracing, Reclaiming Sacramental Reconciliation. It's dated now. And sometimes I think maybe I ought to look at that topic again, because we're still not there. We still haven't recovered reconciliation. And the book is still good, but the analogies are all, a little off. Computers weren't around then, so times were very different. But I've got other things I'm still interested in doing besides rewriting other books. I became very interested in a leader in the American liturgical movement, Father Reinhold, and I spent about 10 years researching and writing a book about his life. And that was my last published book. And in the past 5 years, I've been researching and writing a book about another leader in the liturgical movement. Her name is Ade Bethune. She's an artist, social activist, educator. That book is, I call it The Work and Works of Mercy. And you have one of them on the cover of your syllabus. It's what she called them a wheel calendar. Now we would call it a liturgical calendar or a wall calendar. And she did these for quite a few years. And she was an entrepreneur. She marketed these out of her home, actually. But it is... she's got the Liturgy of the Hours in the center there. You see and she has all of the feasts in very, very tiny. This is all hand done. We don't have computers in this area. This is her artistry. So you practically have to use a magnifying glass to really see it. But I thought it was just the perfect thing to put on the cover of the course outline. So let's turn our attention to the course outline for a moment. I give you my information there. Really, if you need to contact me, call, email, by office hours. I really am in the office every day except Friday. Besides teaching on Mondays and Thursdays, I'm doing a degree in public health, getting ready for my next career. And so I have class Tuesday and Wednesday evenings. So I'm really around a lot. So if you are in the area and you want to actually talk to me, that's great. But text me, email me, whatever, to contact me with your questions. I list there the course description, which comes from the bulletin, and the goals for the course, but I know you've really focused on the requirements. And I realize that it takes a certain kind of dedication to do an online course. When I was the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning, so that was from 1994 to 2000, the interest in online education started to bubble up. And so I took an online course myself out of UCLA. And I was a failure. I didn't complete. I just didn't. I was, running the university at that time, but I just knew that I couldn't follow through on doing all the readings and everything, so I was a dropout. And then even at St. John's, before you can teach online, you have to pass a course in online teaching, which is taught online. It took me 3 times to get through that class, but I finally got through it. And then they needed somebody who was going to teach the undergraduate liturgy class. And so, even though I was provost at that time, I was the best able to do it. And so I taught that course online, and it was fun. So I've been teaching online in various semesters for a while, but I know that it takes a certain kind of perseverance. So really, I encourage you to give yourself a day, a time when you're going to do this. You'll see that I suggest that you check in at least twice weekly. So each week the questions there might be 1 or 2 questions that go along with the readings, and then I ask you to post your response and then to respond to others. So it isn't just, so there's actually a conversation going on, a dialogue. I also, so that's why I'm saying, you post yours once and then nobody else has posted, you check back in a couple days, and there might be someone else to respond to. Don't have to respond to everybody. I just, want it to be as active as we can. I say the posting should be substantive. That's a relative term. What does substantive mean? Well, a healthy paragraph or so. It doesn't, I'm not looking for 3 pages, but, a healthy paragraph. And if you're responding to somebody else, don't just say, yes, I agree. But try to say something, I agree, because, so that you're actually continuing more the conversation. And then there are 4 papers. So I know the first one is due by September 4th or on September 4th. And you're wondering, well, what does she want? Well, really, I want, before you do any of the readings, before anything, what has been your experience of the liturgical year and or liturgy of the hours? And depending on what has been your background, you might have been very active in communities, or you might not have a clue at all. So that's where it is. From that, I title it From Where I Sit, and I mean that from where you sit. Looking back, and maybe it's you focus on that you loved Easter when you were a kid, or you loved Christmas. Or I know some of you are not from the Northern Hemisphere, so maybe your experience of the liturgical year has been different and frustrating, because it seems like so much of what is talked about and sung about is expecting that Easter is a time of springtime and all these flowers blooming, and Christmas is in the dead of winter. But people who come from an area of the world where they don't even have winter, or where the seasons are reversed, have a different experience and a different way of approaching that. Perhaps you're less familiar with the Liturgy of the Hours, don't know what it is. It's probably an element of the reform of the liturgy that has not taken hold so much. Celebrated more often in parishes seasonally. But some of you might have had wonderful experiences in a monastery where all of the Liturgy of the Hours are celebrated. Or maybe Finta Taizé, where there is a Liturgy of the Hours that's celebrated with all of the people who come there. So those are the kinds of things that's what I'm looking for in this paper. Just, where do you come from now? And it doesn't have to be long, 3 pages or so, typed pages, double-spaced. That's why I put words there. And you email these to me. And then I will ask you then, after that, and I've read them, I'll ask you to post some kind of a short summary, maybe a few sentences, on the discussion board. We have 2 textbooks that we're going to be using for the course. There might be other readings, especially with regard to the Liturgy of the Hours, but they'll be available online. And both texts are really classic. Adolf Adam's book on the liturgical year is very, very fine text. And the collection of essays from Between Memory and Hope, edited by Max Johnson, he's collected together some really wonderful classic essays. Some of the authors have died, even some more have died since this book was published. I was just looking through here where they list the authors. And Tom Talley actually used to live in New York City here. He lived in Forest Hills, where I grew up. And Tom's the author of a few essays in here. And I was really privileged to be at his funeral. He was a wonderful character. I know all of the authors here. They've all been colleagues of mine in the North American Academy of Liturgy. And so it's really a pleasure to be engaged with you in conversation over what they've written. And so I'm looking forward very much to the course. Already I'm posting 2 questions to the discussion board. One is to introduce yourselves to us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what interests you have, why you're studying for this degree, where you come from, a little bit of your background. It doesn't have to be as thorough as what I've given you here, but, so we get to know each other as well, and it makes it a little easier to have conversations with each other online. And the other question will be about, do you have any questions about the syllabus? And I will definitely check back and answer those questions that are about the syllabus. And you'll find that each week I do ask, put in a separate topic on the discussion board about questions about the texts, or about what we've covered during the week. You see, I broke the course down into different weeks. There's an error on Roman numeral 8. It's actually the week of November 7th, not the 4th. And then I've tried to give you a couple breaks in there to catch up. Because everybody likes a break every now and again. So that's about it. I hope you're all off to a good start. I hope you had a chance to get the texts. And that you're ready to start reading, and that if you have any questions, you will contact me. Okay? All right. Until next week. See you then. Bye.